Hello YouTube, Marielle here. As a young child, I remember playing with bugs. Who hasn't, right? For example, I remember my brother as well playing a lot with ants. He was fascinated with ants and the way they repelled invaders and how they fought. He used to talk a lot about fights between normal ants or the red ants against the black ants. I was never into it. I never paid much attention to it, but he would sit and just watch the column of ants sometimes take apart other insects or carry their food inside their tunnels. I remember as well my children, when they were younger, playing with bugs and worms. I've seen other people's children do the same. So it looks very much like it's part of growing up. So I never really thought much about it until very recently. Let me tell you about my fascination with bugs. Myself, I was fascinated by a very special kind of beetle. Every year, during a very specific time or a season in the year, we'll get those beetles, and not many of them. I think actually the one that I saw were the ones that actually were about to die. They were struggling, they're always on their backs. And so I'll get a stick and I'll basically flip them back, help them to roll onto their back so I could watch their wings. And I loved watching their wings because those beetles were very, very beautiful. Those beetles, they were not like the brown ones that you see around. They were big, they were much bigger, and also their color, the color on their backs were kind of greenish, metallic, bluish. I think you call them, I went to look on the internet so I could tell you actually what they are. They are called metallic green fig beetles because they're called fig is part of their name because they eat figs, but also metallic is part of their name because of the color, and it's truly, truly beautiful. And that really, really got my attention as a child. I don't even remember playing with anything else than just those beetles. I can't remember whether they were months or years, I'm not sure about that. I went from observing them to holding them underwater, and I think that was because of the reflection, the sun, how the sun reflected on their wings with that color, and I must have found that totally mesmerizing. And underwater, obviously, it was even more magnified and even more beautiful to me. But soon I realized that I realized that with my stick I couldn't hold them underwater long enough, and I also saw that they were very buoyant, or they were very good at floating, and because of that I got the idea to find a way to hold them underwater longer, just to see how long they could hold their breath. So in order to be able to do that, so I could observe them closer and see a wee bit more, I decided to go into my grandma's kitchen, and I got myself a jar, and a clear jar, and I put them in there. And like that I could see them better from all angles. Not only could I see them from all angles, but I could keep them longer as well with me, so I could observe them longer. And every morning when I woke up, I could take them out and they'll be mine, and I could see I could keep admiring their beautiful wings. Now, in this game, in this childish game, my intent really was purely inquisitive. There was nothing malicious about it. It's just that looking back, I just wasn't mature enough to grasp that I was unnecessarily mistreating it, and it wasn't necessary for me to constantly keep them underwater, even if I wanted to just experiment. And you have to understand as well back then, and you have to understand that most of us back then, we used to play completely by ourselves, unsupervised. But just like me, most kids grow out of that phase. It's almost like the scientific phase when when you're a child, and most kids grew out of that, except a very specific kind of child, and that will be the psychopathic child. That will be the child that once they grow out of that phase of playing with insects, I believe they move on to the animals, the pets, their pets, the neighbor's pets, the neighborhood pets. And then as they grow older, more mature, they move on to people. Now, as those kids grow, depending on their family circumstances, their environment, I believe they end up, you end up with the group of them that become possibly overt abusers. They're very, very blatant about what the violence they feel and then they show. And then on the other hand, you have the other type that are covert, passive-aggressive kind of abusers, who are more calculating, cunning, and just as deadly, just like my husband. You see, what I did as a child with those beetles, now that I think about it, I can't help but feel like now I am that beetle. I am that metallic green fig beetle in the jar. And my husband is the observer. My husband is the tormentor. And he keeps pushing me underwater to see how long I can hold my breath, to see me struggle, to see me twitch. You see, any of my reactions is part of his narcissistic supply. He feeds off of that. It must taste like candy to him. Slowly over the years, my husband has gotten worse. And I have gotten worse too. You see, my joy, my upbeat attitude, my optimism for the future, my natural enthusiasm is slowly disappearing. And he likes that. I would even say that he's getting stronger as I am getting weaker. I guess that was his goal all along. I have a story, a short one. I had a friend who told me about an acquaintance of hers who, before she lost her fight with cancer, confided in her about her husband's treatment of her. And she also said to my friend before dying that she believed that the cancer that she was dying of was most probably a result of being with her husband. What's sad about the whole thing, my friend told me, is that after she died, after that woman died, her husband kept telling everyone over and over how she died in his arms, how she took her last breath in his arms. And he kept saying it to basically as often as possible to whoever was, you know, she would just watch all of that happening. And this was, you know, my friend kept thinking that, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, what he's doing. And this is just to get more, to give the impression of being the devoted husband that he absolutely wasn't. But when I think back about that story, now that I know better, that husband, that widow, was getting his narcissistic supply. Just thinking about it is just, it's so creepy. It's so nasty. Those creatures are relentless and truly vicious to get what they want. To the end, they just don't stop.